Previously, on A Love That Lingered, Grace and Arthur's bond has deepened over the last 6 months, their days in the manor weaving together like threads of the same cloth. Their evenings by the fire have become a quiet ritual, one of comfort and wordless understanding. One such evening, Grace leaned in and kissed Arthur, softly, but with the unspoken promise that she was ready to bridge the space between them. This is episode 12, The Eve of Celebration. The manor was uncharacteristically lively. For days, the air had been scented with sweet confections and the faint tang of polished silverware. In the great hall, swaths of pale fabric draped the tall windows, softened by the last light of a late spring afternoon. Ethel Caldwell, radiant in her element, moved about with the precision of a conductor, directing the staff in the final touches for the upcoming celebration. It had been Grace's idea to host her 16th birthday at the manor, but the enthusiasm that followed was infectious. Ethel, delighted to have an excuse to fill the empty rooms with laughter again, insisted on helping to arrange every detail, from the floral centerpieces to the seating plan. Grace had been especially eager to see her eldest sister, Martha, who had recently been wed. She spoke often of wanting to meet her new brother-in-law, curious about the man who had earned her sister's heart. In the weeks leading up to the party, Grace would linger by the writing desk, pen poised over invitations, as if savoring the act of writing each guest's name. The evening before the celebration, the manor seemed to exhale a deep, satisfied breath. The dining tables were set in neat, glimmering lines, the chandeliers polished to catch every flicker of candlelight. The ballroom floor had been cleared and waxed to a sheen. And though the house was ready, its residents were not yet at rest. Arthur remained in his study, bent over papers that demanded his attention even on the eve of his ward's special day. Oliver made his quiet rounds, ensuring the preparations had met his exacting standards. Grace, somewhere between excitement and exhaustion, had not been seen for nearly an hour. Oliver was the one who found her, crossing through the east wing to check the smaller parlors. He paused at the doorway of the long drawing room. There, in the soft lamplight, Grace was sprawled across one of the lounges, her head resting against the armrest, her hair spilling like silk over the cushion. The faint rise and fall of her chest betrayed a deep and unguarded sleep, the kind that claimed her only when she was truly at peace. Oliver's mouth softened into something almost like a smile. She looked younger like this, more the girl she had been when she first stepped through the manor's heavy doors, before her voice had settled into the steady cadence of someone who belonged here. Quietly, he retreated and made his way to Arthur's office. Arthur looked up from his desk when Oliver entered, his pen stalling mid-sentence. "Yes?" "Miss Everly," Oliver said, his tone mild but carrying the hint of amusement, "seems to have been overtaken by the evening before the evening." Arthur frowned faintly. "Meaning?" "She's asleep? In the drawing room. I thought you might prefer to see her return to her bed before one of the maids finds her and makes a fuss." Arthur hesitated only a moment before setting his pen aside and rising from his chair. His movements were deliberate, less to avoid disturbing her, and more to steady the sudden tightness in his chest at the thought of her so near unguarded. When they reached the drawing room, Arthur paused in the doorway, studying the curve of her face in sleep. She looked utterly at home in the pale green light cast by the lamp. A part of him marveled at how natural it felt to have her here, as though her presence had been meant for these halls all along. Stepping closer, he slid an arm beneath her knees and another behind her back. Grace stirred faintly, her brow knitting as if deciding whether to wake, but when her head found the familiar rest of his shoulder, she sighed and yielded again to sleep. Arthur carried her through the quiet corridors, the scent of her hair drifting up to him, a faint trace of lavender from the soap she favored. He kept his steps measured, unwilling to disturb the moment. Somewhere in the back of his mind, a younger, more uncertain version of himself might have questioned whether this was overstepping. But now there was an understanding between them. She trusted him without hesitation, and he carried that trust as carefully as he carried her now. As they passed a tall window, moonlight spilled across them. For a moment, Arthur slowed, glancing down at her face bathed in silver light. She looked so serene, so untroubled, like someone untouched by the shadows he carried in himself. He wished he could promise her a life that would remain this peaceful. When they reached her room, he eased her down onto the bed, pulling the blanket over her shoulders. As he straightened, Grace's hand shifted from beneath the covers, her fingers brushing against his own. Not quite awake, she murmured his name, soft, barely there, but it struck through him like a chord. Arthur lingered for a moment longer, his hand resting atop hers, before pulling away. In the hallway outside her door, Arthur found Oliver waiting. "She'll be rested for tomorrow," Oliver said quietly. Arthur only nodded, but there was a faint, unreadable look in his eyes. He knew tomorrow would be filled with joy, but there was also an undercurrent he couldn't quite shake. Because even in the midst of celebration, life had a way of revealing the things one did not expect. And somewhere deep within him, Arthur suspected that Grace's 16th birthday would mark the beginning of something neither of them could turn away from.